Strange Spring, Mycospawn, 2018. As the weather got better in Hip Forest, my desire to journey into the great unknown resurfaced. The weekend of Mardi Gras came around, and I invited Thomas to stay over for a couple nights. I hadn't seen him since the summer, and it had been a super long time before that as well. We were both transforming for sure, as we all are, all the time, but I feel like that time was turbulent for both of us. Thomas had dealt with a challenging relationship, or perhaps a couple, and a fiery college roommate experience. He was attending school at the Great Northern Woods University, a place known for an abundance of white sands, and not a whole lot else to do but raise hell. I felt sorry for him, because I knew I wouldn't have done well at that university, with my proclivities toward depression and power solutions. But there we were together, and ready to hang like good old times. This time, though, we were to consume some Mycospawn together for the first time. It was also Thomas's first time trying Mycospawn at all. I was excited to enter the great unknown with him, and to see what it could uncover for the both of us. We consumed the Mycospawn blended with a ginger tea lemonade I made, a mixture I figured would be tasty and make the experience come on faster than usual. Blending the ingredients together created a foamy liquid with a colour that resembled the lemonade-flavoured vitamin water. "Oh dude, this tastes just like kombucha," Thomas said confidently. "I could drink this all the time." I remembered when I first ate Mycospawn and thought that they tasted like sunflower seeds, something I thought I could eat all the time. Of course, just like I had, Thomas would see that Mycospawn isn't an all-the-time thing, so there was no need for me to get in the way of wisdom he'd receive anyway. After we gulped down the smoothies, we got prepared for a trek into the woods down a local bike path, a place I like to go to for green power consumption walks. The snow wasn't fully gone, and it wasn't quite spring warmth yet, but it was a warmer day than Hip Forest had enjoyed in a while, so everything was naturally melty. It was an overcast day, the type that beckons thunderstorms in the summer, but this was a lukewarm early spring day, and Mardi Gras nonetheless. We started our walk down the paved path that led to our seclusion from the public eye, and Thomas started to joke that it was like I was taking him somewhere to kill him. Not a thing I like to joke about while entering the great unknown, but I couldn't say he was wrong about that vibe. The effects came on rapidly, and sure enough the great unknown was upon us as our collective frequency of giggles increased. The colours in our environment were oddly dull, with wet browns, faded pinks, and the ruby reds of the poison sumac clusters. Thomas started talking to me about how you could make a tea out of the stuff, but that you had to be careful because of the spiky filaments on the little red bud-like parts that could get stuck in your tongue. For some reason, this really freaked me out, and through nervous laughter, I urged him to stop talking about it. He gave me a look of disapproval, and we continued. Our plan had been to spend the afternoon outside, walking in a set of forested paths that branched off the bike path we were on. Unfortunately, we had to walk next to a busy highway to reach the junction, a segment that made me really self-conscious. I couldn't shake the sense that we were visibly under the influence of Mycospawn to every driver on the highway, and that surely someone was going to interfere to see what was going on. Plus, it was rather cold out, and did we really want to dwell in the woods, in the dull colours? We had planned on listening to music together with my headphone splitter so that we'd be in the same cool music video experience, but I felt like that would make us too unaware of our surroundings, perfect prey for any type of predators. I told Thomas that I wanted to head back because I wanted to be warm and listen to music, and to minimise the variables out of our control. Thomas was apparently handling the Mycospawn onset better than I was, or perhaps it wasn't hitting him as hard, because of his greater size, but I think my reluctance to follow through with our original plan bothered him. Still, we kept the positive vibe well enough and agreed to turn around as soon as we reached a sign in the distance, a sign I had picked out which was conveniently close to us, and I proceeded to walk as fast as possible toward it. It really made no sense to rush the journey towards something else that would put me in reverse, but I was melting into some anxiety and uncertainty about what was really going on, or rather what the deal with Thomas was. How much was he really in the great unknown anyway? How much was he feeling it? Did Silocytes have ill designs for the likes of his consciousness? There were many questions that would prove troublesome to try and answer, at least without seeming like a paranoid wreck. Then the peak visual of the experience surfaced. While we trudged through a small patch of wet snow in the paved path, it seemed like we slipped into a different version of reality. Really all that happened was we walked through a small patch of wet snow, but the way that doing such a thing had affected me was bizarre. I was either laughing or deep in thought, but it seemed that the surrounding visual plane had quickly turned to blackness in a flash, as if the grey sky had turned to nighttime for just a few seconds. Once we exited the small wet snow patch, everything was back to normal, and I felt like time had stretched through a dilation. We laughed together about the whole thing as we ascended our way out of the ravine, and as we approached civilization again, I felt the need to ask Thomas a favour. "Hey man, do you think that we could just, not really talk much, or just keep it down while we walk back to my place? I just don't want to make a scene, just to minimize bad vibes," I asked politely. Yeah, sure, man," Thomas replied, reluctantly I felt. As we got close to my place, I started to notice that it was busier in town than usual. What I was failing to consider was that it was both the weekend and Mardi Gras. "Oh yeah, I totally forgot it was Mardi Gras," I said out loud. "Woo, Mardi Gras," a young woman cheered from her balcony behind us. We both looked back, and when Thomas turned back around to face me, he had a wildly large grin on his face as he uttered a chuckle. I ushered us forward with a nervous laugh, but then a man rode by us on a lay-down, close-to-the-ground style-type bike. He had stupid, cheap-looking sunglasses and had his mouth wide open as if in a stupor. It was then I knew chaos was truly upon us. I think Thomas could sense my uneasiness as my pace picked up and we made it to my street. Phew, almost there, I thought to myself, but then Thomas crossed the street and started going the direction we had just came from. "Bye, dude. I'm just going to go over here, man. Bye," he said with a smug grin. I thought for sure this was the terrible moment that was going to define my life. Thomas was going to try something stupid because of Mycospawn that I gave him, and he was somehow going to die due to a force outside of my control, by hook or by crook. "Dude, get back here," I shouted to him. "Hey, Thomas, come here, Thomas." It was like I was trying to coax a cat across the street. He laughed hysterically as he enjoyed fucking with me, quite amused by how easy it was to get me worried about him. As I started walking toward my apartment, I realized he was probably just fucking with me, especially since he turned around and followed me home, albeit on the other side of the street, while shooting me playful glares all the while. "You're a silly, silly man, Thomas," I said, while shaking my head. It was only half in jest, and I was actually pretty pissed. He continued to laugh as he crossed the street, and we got inside my apartment safely as I rushed to close and lock the door, as if demons were close behind us. "Dude, what were you doing?" I was trying to not be too affected, so I said it in a way that sounded half in jest. "I was just fucking around with you, dude." He didn't see what the harm could have been in his level of fuckery, unaware of my acute paranoia about my friends not being the real versions of themselves while I was in the great unknown. "This is not the time to fuck around, man. You don't do that shit around me, dude. I mean, I have no idea what's going on in your head right now, so it's not really a good time to fuck around. I thought you were taking off on me there." He laughed. "I know, dude," and it was hilarious. It was no use trying to get on a serious emotional level with Thomas. He didn't like the softness, at least not at this point in his life. Having a dope or badass time was always important to Thomas, so straying away from 100% confidence was not a good look. I sucked it up, and we climbed the stairs back to my apartment, which Luna had returned to by this point. We entered the apartment, and it smelled wonderful, with Luna's butternut squash soup simmering on the stove. There she was right when we opened the door, smiling and beaming with energy, showing us artwork she purchased at a vintage lifestyle store. The idea was hilarious, and we couldn't stop laughing. For some reason, everything Luna said seemed to have a kinky double entendre attached to it, though I'm sure she didn't mean it. Surely Silocytes was trying to put ideas into our heads, I reckon. She was so cute and welcoming, and immediately made me feel safe because I knew that at least she wasn't fucking with me. Luna invited us to colour with her, and the idea sounded great to me. Thomas didn't seem thrilled by the idea, but put on his headphones to listen to some music and started colouring away. I asked Luna which music she wanted to listen to, and she joked that she wanted to listen to Kid Cudi, what Thomas was listening to. It was always hard to detect Luna's sarcasm, so I gave an earnest "really" in reply, and she scoffed and replied "no," as if it were obvious that she was being sarcastic. Thomas heard all of this through his headphones, though he didn't reveal so much until later. Luna was being rude to the wrong person, because Thomas was easily riled up and offended. I can't remember what Luna said to him, but Thomas's reply started with "honey, sweetie," as if to say, "Girl, you don't even know." And it was a strange thing to hear out loud from Thomas to Luna. Luna and I both laughed because the expression caught us so off guard, and I'm afraid this was even more alienating for him. Eventually, Thomas and I transitioned to consuming green power and listening to MGMT's latest album, Little Dark Age, which I had been vibing with despite the poor reviews. I felt bad for MGMT. People just couldn't let go of their initial vibe. But we were sitting there listening to their song, When You Die, and Luna kept shouting to me from the other room. She was getting ready to go to a party with work friends, and I was feeling ready for her to be out of our equation. When it was clear in my tone that I was getting annoyed with Luna, I returned to my seat and took a puff of green power vapor, right when MGMT's lyrics chimed, "Go fuck yourself." And it was a perfect synchronicity. Thomas and I cracked up in response to how perfect this was, and after our laughter, we noticed that the Mycospawn was definitely leaving our systems. Thomas lamented the exit of Silocytes, saying he could have handled much more and wished that we had spent more of the experience listening to music. I knew what he meant, but was trying to accept the way the experience went myself. We got fries somewhere, but Thomas couldn't get beer anywhere because of his temporary ID. We were going to play foosball, but he wasn't allowed into the building because they didn't accept temporaries. There was a lot going against us, I think. The next day we chatted and kicked a small ball back and forth around the apartment and left on good terms. Luna suggested that perhaps I move on from him. I felt like it was an extreme reaction, and it'd probably be better to just never have the two in the same room again. The Mycospawn experience with him was enjoyable and interesting at points for sure, however much there seemed to be a shadowy afterglow.